Hello everyone and welcome to BrickCats. My channel is for anyone who enjoys custom LEGO creations, likes saving money, and or those looking to get into custom building. If you're a fan of my channel or are interested in supporting what I do, please consider liking this review, subscribing, or leaving a comment. Each like, subscription, and comment helps others find my channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Today I'm reviewing Caleb Rix's orange and white T-70 X-Wing Starfighter. Without any substitutions, in May 2024, Bricklink gave me 3 stores and $126 without shipping and tax, or about $153 with shipping and tax. In my reviews, I offer my opinions on aesthetics and model features, parts issues you might want to look out for, the build experience, the model's integrity, and I close out with my overall impression and pricing information in the conclusion. If you're watching this review, I assume that you bought the instructions or are interested in buying them. I also assume a basic level of familiarity with Bricklink's ordering system and LEGO nomenclature. I only use genuine LEGO bricks and I always purchase the instructions. I create these reviews for my own personal enjoyment and in the hopes that my advice will make your experience more enjoyable and or less expensive. The T-70 measures just under 14 inches long, 12 inches wide, and on the included display stand tops out at 7 inches off the surface of my table here. Without the display stand, the X-Wing is about 3 inches tall on the included retractable landing gear. I want to start by highlighting how thin the fuselage of this model is. Most X-Wing fuselages tend to be 7 or 8 studs wide, and this one is barely over 6. Shaping of the fuselage overall is incredibly good, with a nearly seamless transition between the front and rear sections, and basically no right angles anywhere. It's very impressive, and this alone makes the model look and feel very sleek. Starting at the nose, there is some slight relief for the nose cone, and the front section of the fighter is a uniform white. This is canon accurate, and the T-70 is noticeably more angular than the T-65, so this looks really good to me. As we move towards the rear of the fighter, the white continues back to the cockpit. To maintain the proportions of the fighter, this looks very good, but to be completely canon accurate, this white section would be a bit shorter, and the orange would extend just a little bit past the cockpit. Sadly, there's no representation of the Proton torpedo tubes, but I think some custom stickers would work well here, as most official LEGO sticker sheets have that black bar that's just about the right shape and thickness. Also on the side of the fuselage, I want to highlight how impressive this construction is of the diagonal orange section and the diagonal white section. It's really cool how it matches up pretty much perfectly, and I love the wedge, the orange wedge here set at a different angle that matches up with the vertical of the rear fuselage there. The cockpit uses what I typically refer to as the outline method, as there's still no canon accurate X-Wing windscreen piece, so this looks very good to me. If anything, I think the cockpit proportions are a little small. The T-70's windscreen looks larger compared to the T-65 because the T-70 is shorter in canon. The cockpit hinges upwards like so, and there is room for a pilot minifigure. There's no studs in the bottom of the seat there, so the pilot does tend to lean back a little bit. But you can see inside there is the representation of a control stick. A full astromech minifigure does not fit in the droid slot behind the cockpit. This is a 2x2 round brick with holes and the droid head to represent the droid. The greebling strip is small but well done with some very simple detailing. There is no S-foil button or mechanism here as the wings open and close manually. The thrusters themselves are modified 1x1 bricks with studs on all sides and grille tiles with some dark pink 1x1 round plates for some engine glow. I think this is a good choice over the more standard barrel or wheel elements, as the wheels are larger in diameter while the barrels are longer. The actual film model for this fighter hanging in the Smithsonian shows the rearmost section of the thrusters being more or less the same length and diameter as the rest of the assembly. The intake side of the engines use the 3x3x1 round corner brick and a pretty simple but pretty good way of getting the bottom edge. Since this is all black, it blends in very nicely. The wings look amazing with the azure stripes and the continuation of the orange triangle. And as you'd expect, the S-foils split in the right place as well, and they fit together perfectly. The cannons are nice and thin, and the main length of the barrel is a 3mm rigid hose. I think these look great. You could certainly make the case for using white instead of light bluish gray, but that's kind of up to you if you want a majority white cannon. As always, this would not be a BrickCats X-Wing review if I decried the lack of a suitable element for the X-Wing flash suppressor, and the designer has opted for jumper plates here. The orange color detailing is mirrored pretty well on the underside while still maintaining the shape of the hull. The landing gear does stick out color-wise, but you can swap the tile and jumper plate for orange if you really want to in order to make the landing gear blend in better, or just remove it entirely and mirror the construction of the topside engines if you don't want it at all. The landing gear does work perfectly fine. These fold out. And the footer rests very nicely on them. The landing skids are cliff and bar connections, so they will stand up to some casual bumps. Anything past that and they might collapse on you. This is a pretty standard construction for an X-Wing model though, and it's very posable in a mock scene. Finally, the rear section of the T-70 is shaped very nicely, and again it's much smaller than you'd find on a T-65 with just a few greaving details visible. The display stand uses two studs on the bottom of the fighter that go into these Technic holes to mount the fighter at a nice upward angle, as you've seen. The stand is pretty minimal, but it gives you a really good amount of height off of your display surface, and anecdotally I think this is one of the tallest display stands that comes with a model that I've built at least, so that's pretty nice. And these holes on the stand match up to these two holes on the fighter here. Overall, Caleb Rix's T-70 is an ingeniously constructed model that is quite different from any other X-Wing I built on account of its unique color scheme and the challenges that come with implementing it. It looks great on your shelf and it's highly accurate to the source material. Caleb Rix's orange T-70 requires 247 elements and 1,206 pieces for the ship and the stand. The 17 Technic Axle 2L notched specified in black, part 32062, can all be changed to the more common red, but either one obviously works fine. This is for the stand. I set the color of this in the wanted list to not applicable. The Cone 2x2 truncated in dark turquoise, part 98100, is the stand-in for the astromech droid. If you've got an astromech you want to use, such as R2-D2 like I did, I would remove this piece, and this is what I did for my pricing research. Note that the following elements are also part of the astromech representation. A full droid does not fit in the slot, so you may need to adjust the colors to fit your desired droid. The 2 minifigure neck bracket with back stud, thin back wall, part 42446, specified in white, can be substituted with the newer mold with the thick back wall, part 28974. 28974 has the advantage of being available from Pick-a-Brick. The parts list contains two variants of the jumper plate, parts 3794B and 15573. As far as I can tell, functionally, these are interchangeable in this model, so I combined the quantities listed for 3794B into the more common 15573. The hose 9L in light bluish gray, part 75C09, is used for the lower cannon, and these are much less common and more expensive than the 11L hose, part 75C11. I would change the quantity of the 11L hoses to 4 and cut 16mm or 2 studs worth off of them, and eliminate the 9L hoses entirely. Quantities in this model tend to be on the smaller side, but there are some elements that are significantly more expensive on Bricklink than in Pick-a-Brick. Orange tends to be a less common color in general, so that definitely factors into it. The list below won't get you to the thresholds for waiving the handling fees or shipping, or free shipping that is, but if you're placing a larger order you might consider buying the following elements from Pick-a-Brick. As usual, I used the Brick Hunter extension to check the entire parts list against the Pick-a-Brick inventory, and I'll go over those results in the conclusion. The T-70 instructions contain 858 steps, with each part or subassembly you add in each step outlined in red against a dark gray background. This is certainly different, but I found it to be helpful when building the white sections in particular, and it didn't cause any visibility problems building the other sections. Pacing is generally fine. Most steps have you adding a manageable number of 1 to 3 elements, although occasionally there's an odd step that has you adding 5, such as in step 49. There's also usually a couple of steps on each page, which is good because it reduces the need to hit page down or to scroll. I only found a few steps in the instructions I think could use some improvement. In steps 51 and 280, the 1x1 plate is floating and doesn't get connected until the step after. This is a problem because there's a gap underneath this 1x1 plate large enough for it to settle in at an angle and thus be slightly more difficult to connect in the following step. In step 292, the light bluish gray 1x1 plate is hidden. And in step 466, you can't see which way the stud on the modified 1x1 brick is facing. Step 658 has you finishing up the top greedling strip, but there's no step showing the subassembly connecting to the main fuselage. Interestingly, the instructions file skips step 659, so I assume this was just removed by accident or something, and the missing step shows the top greedling strip being put in place. It's not that hard to figure out once you're building it. And finally, I have two minor sequencing issues, and these just stem from the amount of pressure it requires to connect a ball joint. Step 612 and 711 have you connecting the sides of the front fuselage with two ball or mixel joints. This is a little difficult, especially with the second one in step 711, but there's really not a good way to get around it. Just apply slow, steady pressure and you should be able to get it without causing anything to break catastrophically. And in step 717, this has you connecting the bottom of the nose cone with the two mixel joints on the maxi figure hand pieces. Due to the fragility of the front fuselage sections and the amount of force required to get these in place, I suggest putting the maxi figure hands in place when building the sides of the front fuselage in step 600 and 699. It's quite easy to move the plate side of the maxi figure hands around in that ball joint to get the curved slope to attach in the right way. This model does use some illegal connections and does require some experience to know where to apply pressure and how to keep certain sections together. In addition, some of the connections are a little bit difficult to make. As a result, I think experienced builders with a couple of custom models under their belt will have the best experience with this model. Younger builders should take care if using my hose substitution and cutting the 11L hoses or whatever hose you decide to use, so make sure an adult is supervising in that case. The build took me about 6 hours total with some pre-sorting into the major element families beforehand. This T-70 should be considered primarily a display model as it does have some fragile areas. You can pick it up and swoosh it gently, and the grip is something like this. It's pretty solid back here, so it's no problem to hold it. One of the main problems I found is actually taking it off the stand. The small subassembly covering up that little gap always comes off. Luckily, this is pretty easy to pop back in place. So you can pick this up and swoosh it gently. Like I said, it's pretty sturdy with your thumb here and your fingers on the bottom, and you don't really need to worry about too many things breaking like this. Since there is no S-foil mechanism, if you roll it too hard, the wings can flop back and forth. You can kind of see the fuselage moving independently of the wings. Other than that, the most likely pieces of this model to fall off are the grill tiles at the back. There's something weird with the brick 1x1 modified with studs on the sides. Like, the grill tiles don't feel like they clutch all the way. It's very odd. So they can fall off, but obviously that's pretty easy to put back in place. Like I said earlier, the landing gear is fairly stable, and it does allow the ship to be posed in a scene quite nicely. And while the stand is stable, you've probably seen this throughout the video, but it does wobble quite a bit. I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe, I think it's just because it's a little difficult to see, but lift up the stand. You can see there's really not much of a connection. Like, the bottom of the fighter doesn't touch the Technic piece right here, and so it's really just touching at a connection point. So without anything to kind of brace the back, the model is also a little bit front heavy. It does kind of bounce around. I've never had this actually fall off, so that's good. And you can kind of see there's a really nice stable base here. So I don't have any worries about this tipping over, and like I said, I haven't had this completely fall off the stand no matter how hard I've bumped it, and I've actually bumped this pretty good. So it's a pretty stable stand and pretty stable connection. Caleb Rix's T-70 is by far the best orange and white T-70 model I know of, and also happens to be one of the only original models I can find. And by that I mean it's not a modification of the official set. So while competition is thin, that doesn't take away from how well thought out the challenging color scheme is implemented while still being decently stable. In my opinion, the designer has set the bar very, very high for this unique fighter. I was pleasantly surprised with the pricing for this model as well, which makes it an even better deal. Like I said earlier, without any substitutions, I was getting 3 stores and $126 without shipping and tax, or about $153 with shipping and tax. With my substitutions, I got 4 stores and $100 without shipping and tax, or about $131 with shipping and tax. And then buying as much as I could from Pick-a-Brick, my Pick-a-Brick total was $114. This included tax, but did not include shipping and handling because I met the thresholds in the standard and bestseller categories. The few remaining elements I had to get from Bricklink. I think there were 4 of them. These were all very inexpensive, so I got them from one store and less than $1. So that's about $7 with shipping and tax, for a total of $121. Instructions for the orange T-70 are available for $15, and the sale can be coordinated by Instagram direct message with the designer, username ricksbricks.lego. There's also a green variant for sale, and if you buy both versions, the total cost for both instruction sets and parts list is $25. Thanks as always for watching my review of Caleb Ricks' orange T-70 X-Wing. If you've built this model, you have something to share that I left out, or have a question about something I didn't cover, please leave your thoughts below in the comments. Remember to subscribe, leave the video a like or a comment, and follow me on Instagram if you haven't already, and I hope to see you back next time.